I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a powerful memoir. It is called The Battle Within. It's written by a terrific author. Her name is Kristina Quarles. This riveting true story reveals her harrowing experiences with bullying, assault, and a genetic disease that claimed her siblings, as well as her fight to reclaim her life, marriage, and the lives of her children. Join us as we explore this deeply personal journey of survival, resilience, and hope. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her in the spotlight today. We ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Kristina, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. I'm delighted.
Why did you name the book The Battle Within?
That's a great question. So I thought for several years about, putting everything on paper. And once I started journaling, digging into my own emotions a little bit more, trying to help myself overcome some of these obstacles, I realized that for the longest time, I was only fighting myself. Um, there's so many horrible things that happened. There's so many horrible things I had to overcome. But in the bigger scheme of things, as I got older, as I started my own family, I was really fighting myself. I was fighting to let go of the pain and the anger that was associated with everything that I had been through.
The children in school would tease you because, or bully you because of your genetic condition? Or
No,
just rotten kids in general?
well, a little bit of rotten
Yeah,
kids,
yeah.
and then too. So I grew up in a predominantly African American neighborhood. My father, who raised me, is African American. His family is as well, and so I was one of the only Caucasian children in the school, the only one for a little while. And although, a great portion of the school didn't see me differently, of course, there were the handful of kids that did,
Yeah.
and they were not bashful about pointing out how different we really were. And then, it's unfortunate, especially in middle school and high school, as we get older, a few bullies point out one difference, and, everybody jumps on the bandwagon. So,
Yeah. It's tough. Like you said, the first mean kid does it, and the other kids don't want to be picked on, so they go along with it. And
yeah.
it's a very, very difficult situation. Did you have to leave that school to get the situation resolved, or how did it finally resolve itself?
Sadly, I wouldn't even say it resolved itself. I turned into the mean girl.
Mm.
So, not having or not feeling like I had the necessary support I needed, or, at such a young age, not having the voice to articulate what was happening to me, how it made me feel, and ask for the help I needed to get over it, I just became the mean girl. So I turned into this version that, I didn't really recognize when I looked in the mirror, but the thought process at such a young age was, I'll hurt you before you hurt me.
You got to fight back, and
Yeah.
that's what happens. Um, the difficulties with your siblings must have been
Yeah.
extremely hard on you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So me and my brother are 6 years apart. Me and my sister are 4 years apart. So I am the third child. Um, my brother was sick my whole life. I never remember him not being sick. He was diagnosed at 11, so I was only 4. Um, Me and my sister were best friends. So the transition of her getting sick hit completely different than watching him. Of course, it was very painful to see him go through those transitions and pass, but watching my sister was a completely different roller coaster because she went from this vibrant young woman full of life to, pretty much being in a vegetative state. In growing up, I'm sure anyone can imagine, you know, how painful it is to watch somebody you care about go through anything like that. But in my mind, especially in, my early to middle teenage years, every time I looked at my sister, all I could think is I'm looking at myself. Because at that time I had no idea. I hadn't been tested.
Mm.
I had no idea if I was also going to inherit the illness. So every time I was around her, every time I looked at her, any hope I had for myself or my future was gone because that was my reality.
Yeah. Scared to death that that's going to be me next. What is the genetic ailment that your siblings are suffering from?
Yeah, so they were diagnosed with
Mm.
Huntington's chorea. It's a genetic muscle and brain disorder.
Yeah.
Um, the way I describe it to a lot of people is it reminds me of um, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's
Mm.
mixed together. So, like I said, my brother was sick the majority of my life, so I don't really remember him being independent. But imagine somebody going from being completely independent to not being able to feed themselves, not being able to walk straight, not towards the end, my sister couldn't talk, it literally strips everything from you.
These degenerative neuromuscular disorders are devastating on a
They
person.
are.
And they're very, very difficult to deal with. And like you said, your brother was sick your whole life, so you were kind of used to it, but it hit you like a ton of bricks when you saw your sister like that.
Yeah.
Um, Awful, awful. And then there was an assault in your life as well. If you want to share something about that and the recovery from that, and where you found the strength to bounce back from that.
Yeah. So, I sit and think about it today and I imagine a lot of people, women and men, who um, are survivors of sexual assault. We always find ourselves circling back to what did I do? What could have I done? Right. So for me, um, like I said, I turned into this person that, I'll hurt you before you hurt me. You won't see any weakness in me. So I admittedly started hanging around the wrong crowds of people, started drinking a little bit, started experimenting with drugs. So I put myself in some situations I should not have been in. Nevertheless, this individual and me went to school together. We knew each other. We had all the same friends, and we were just hanging out. Um, we were not the only people at the house. By the time the assault was over, it was just me and him for the most part. I later discovered that his mother was home and upstairs. So, then that circles in my mind too. If I would have just screamed, if I would have fought back, then his mother would have heard, you know. Um, and I would love to say that I was strong enough just to bounce back and keep on going. And I feel like I convinced myself for years that I was because I put on this mask, like I went to school, I have a career, I have an amazing husband, I started my family and I I wear this mask like I'm so strong and I just go through the day where in reality, once the mask was off and I was home, e- every year the depression got worse. Every year the pain resurfaced a different way. It was harder to hold the nightmares back and reliving the moment. And in all honesty, the only thing that has got me to the place I'm at today, to where I can even remotely hold a conversation about the incident without just completely breaking down, is really journaling and then my public speaking. Me being able to meet with a group of people, knowing that maybe me telling my story and my voice is being a voice for them, so they don't have to hide and they don't have to bury it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, is the only thing that's really got me through.
Exactly. So hindsight's 2020. If I did this, if I did that, I mean, you really have to clear your mind, as you know, of those kind of horrible head games that you play with yourself because you're not responsible for somebody else's awful behavior. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Why did you decide to share your story with the world in this book?
Absolutely. So, as I had mentioned, I I realized that as time passed, the depression got worse. So where it went from, maybe I'd have to have a couple glasses of wine at night to sleep and not have nightmares, it had gotten to where, maybe I have to have a bottle of wine to
Right.
sleep and not have nightmares. So as time passed, it just got worse and worse. And I realized what I needed to numb that feeling, what I needed to not wake up in a nightmare or a cold sweat had to be more with each passing year. And I know people, say the phrase all the time, I didn't recognize myself looking in the mirror. I literally did not recognize myself looking in the mirror. That the person looking back was not me. It's not the person, I ever wanted to be. I certainly didn't want my children to see me that way. Um, so I made the decision looking in the mirror one day, this is it. I can't do this anymore. So I told my husband, like, I can't do this alone. I'm going to have to go away for trauma therapy.
Right.
I made a phone call. That day I was on a plane the next morning. I went away for 30 days, very intensive therapy, amazing group of people that helped me through everything. And it wasn't easy, by any means. I knew I was going to have to relive some moments that I had buried. I knew it was going to be very painful, but all I could see was if I don't do this now, the person that little girl that I hid away under lock and key at 13 years old will never come back.
Right.
So
Yeah,
for me, honestly, it was a life or death decision.
yeah. Well, we're glad you made the right decision because that type of drinking can't be sustained very long.
Right.
And it's detrimental, of course, to your marriage, to your children, and all of that. You realized it, and it doesn't matter where the journey we take. And I think what matters most is the destination. And you're on the right path now, thank goodness. And you had a lot to deal with at a young age. I mean, from the bullying to the devastation of witnessing your siblings in such a um, sick condition, to an assault. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And, it manifested itself in problems in your life later on. And thank goodness you received help. And I think this book is going to be a great help for people who have other challenges, similar challenges, because we all go through something in life. Not all of it's good, unfortunately. Some have it worse than others, no doubt. But this book's going to be very, very helpful. It's called The Battle Within. It's written by Kristina Quarles. It's a riveting true story that reveals her harrowing experiences with bullying, assault, and a genetic disorder, a genetic disease that claimed her siblings. It's a powerful book. It's about a life that was derailed by some outside forces, but a life that has been put back on the right track. Kristina, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. It was my honor.
Honor was all mine. I appreciate your candor and your insight. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.